I'm Mangino. Welcome to the Mangino Talks Pittsburgh podcast. I've been a radio talk show host for half of my life and nearly half of that right here in Pittsburgh. And so we talk about everything that matters to us all here on Mangino Talks. It's issues from social issues to sports, current events, to Pittsburgh history, politics, to practical day-to-day life. And today we're talking about the issue of hunger. It's really interesting. Back when COVID-19 first hit, there were long food bank lines all over the country, people who were clearly in need, and it went on for quite some time. And then it seemed as though it began to wane. There was food that was made available by the federal government with increased services that were made available to individuals. And apparently there's been a little bit of a cutback when it comes to that. And now there are reports that food banks are experiencing a bit of a increased demand over the first half of the year for their services. And so we are now turning to Lisa Scales. She is the president and CEO of the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank, joining us on Mangino Talks. Lisa, welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you very much for your time. Tell me, what are you witnessing when it comes to this increased need? How widespread is it?
It's across our entire Lebanon service area. We're seeing more people come to us in need of food, seniors, parents with children, individuals, really across the board. Inflation continues to impact what individuals and families are able to afford at the grocery store.
And so when you look at the individuals who are most clearly in need, you mentioned seniors and families with children. What more can you tell us about the issues that they are facing and, in some cases, the choices that are before them?
Yes. So about half of the people we serve on average each month are seniors who are on a fixed income or families with children. And so in terms of seniors, they're on a fixed income. So inflation has hit them particularly hard. And they are often left choosing between paying for their medication, paying for food, for their utilities. They're really struggling. We had one senior who called in for food assistance and told us that she didn't even know she could fill her prescription.
Oh, wow.
In terms of paying for her medication versus paying for food at the grocery store.
Now, what's interesting is that we hear reports that inflation is coming down a bit and that it's not as severe as it was, say, 6 to 12 months ago, but you're seeing an increased need over the course of the past 6 months. What are you attributing that to besides just the ongoing struggles with inflation?
Right. And inflation is coming down, and but it's still higher than it had been. So, again, those on fixed income or with children are really being hit hard. But in addition to that, in March, there were, during the pandemic, there were some emergency allotments of SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, and those allotments ended. And so a number of people we serve are impacted by that. They had received a second payment in the month to help them with their food purchases, and that went away. And so that is why we saw a very large increase, especially in March and April.
Now, in a recent story that is published regarding this, it says here that normally you deal with a budget that is around $800,000 per month, but it increased to more than $1 million. It says $1 million higher. Now, is it over $1 million, or does that mean you're pushing $1.8 million in a budget now for food?
Right. So for the months of March and April, we typically spend $800,000 a month, or on average, so $1.6 million. During the time this spring, we spent $2.7 million, $3 million on food purchases in March and April. And many folks think of us in terms of donated food, and that all of our food is donated, and we get a good bit donated, especially fresh produce, which we're thrilled to have that. But the government also helps. The biggest way the federal government assists food banks is actual provision of food to food banks across the country. But those items that aren't normally donated, or by the government, such as eggs and meat, and cheese, those items we have to purchase. And so we like to have a good variety of nutritious food on our inventory. And So we do have a large purchase budget each year, but we did over significantly in March and April.
Are you concerned at all that the produce donations may diminish as a result of what many farms are experiencing, whether it's locally or across the country, in decreased yields? I know of one local farmer that produces peaches, and they even say that their production is so reduced that they're not offering their peaches available at wholesale for people to do for fundraisers. They're just that concerned. Are you worried that the produce that you've once been able to count on is not going to be able to come in as great a volume as you may need?
That is, and we're counting more and more on fresh produce. It's almost 35% of our distribution. This past year, we distribute more than 12 million pounds of fresh produce, and we believe in the future it will be more than half of our distribution. So we're all in produce. It's nutritious. It's expensive at the grocery store. There are communities that don't have access to produce. So that does concern me quite a bit. We're fortunate that we're part of a produce cooperative at the Port of Philadelphia that serves about 30 food banks in the Mid-Atlantic region. That's the largest produce port on the East Coast. And so we're able to get produce from there. We do get produce from California and really across the country, and even up from South America and down from Canada. So we spread a net when it comes to fresh produce because we know that is still in abundance, and it's our best opportunity for food. And we also have about 40 area farms, local farms, that do donate. And that's where what you mentioned, I'm concerned that their yields are down and we won't get as much from them this year as we typically do.
We all are paying attention to what's happening in Ukraine and the grain stocks that they're not going to be able to make available. I realize that's an international thing on the other side of the world, if you will. But doesn't that ultimately have a ripple effect, not only on individual family budgets when it comes to food costs, but then ultimately to food banks such as yours?
It does. It definitely will impact that, maybe not right away, but eventually we will see higher prices for grains, bread, and pasta and other items that contain grain. So that is a concern that we have. And we have experienced this before. There was an issue once where Putin, Russia, banned the import of chicken from the U.S., and the U.S. was set to sell all this chicken to Russia. It was a number of years ago. And when he banned it, all that chicken went to food banks around the country. Our food bank alone, more than 20 tractor trailer loads of frozen chicken at that time. So it impacts us in a lot of ways. Sometimes we get a donation, but other times our costs are higher. And that increased cost this past spring is both because the demand was high, but also because our food costs are high.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. When you talk about the issue of inflation and it having that detrimental impact on those who are in the greatest need for food, it also impacts your budget to go out and purchase the eggs, meat, and dairy products necessary that you say is upwards of 35% of your budget. 35% of donated food is fresh produce. So when you look at what you have to purchase, it has a negative impact. How are you then coping with adjusting to the inflation and providing the food that you need for the families that are coming to you?
Well, our first priority is ensuring that all of our neighbors have consistent access to nutritious food. So this past fiscal year for us, it just ended June 30, we were $3 million over budget overall for the year in terms of food purchases. But we did that with the support from the community. And so we have great support from the community, individuals, corporations, foundations, and support for food as well. Really important as the state budget is about to pass. And there's some additional costs for food banks in that budget for us to receive more food. So really important for us to be able to continue to provide a good quantity of nutritious food to our neighbors.
Is that delayed budget having an impact on you?
Not yet, but if it goes much longer, it certainly will.
Wow. When it comes to dealing with going $3 million over budget, it isn't as though you can just wish the money into your accounts. It takes those who are willing to you dip into some aspect of reserves, or you go to foundations and individuals. Speak for a moment on how Pittsburgh has been rising to the occasion over the past number of years to help you help our neighbors?
Well, this is Pittsburgh at its best, right? Neighbors helping neighbors. And when we have an opportunity to bring corporate leaders here, government leaders, individuals, the philanthropy community out to the food bank and educate them on the needs in the community and who it is we're helping and the impact we're able to have across 11 counties in southwestern PA. People dig deep in their pockets, and they've been very generous. And they understand. They understand that children can't learn if their stomachs are growling and they're hungry. That seniors are really struggling and sometimes cutting their pills in half so that they can both eat and take their medication. And our neighbors who have the ability to provide the food and provide the monetary donations, they understand that, and no one wants to see people going hungry.
How important is it to the food bank to have individual food drives where churches and other organizations would conduct those, or individuals would want to save up for some food items that go through their pantries and then bring those items in? How beneficial and impactful are those efforts?
That's great, and I encourage people all the time to have food drives if they're with a civic organization, a school, a church, a synagogue, to do that. And most often, that food stays right in their neighborhood. We have over 1,000 partners in our network in southwestern Pennsylvania. So often, that food can stay right there in their own neighborhood.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, my guess is that you can get $1 to go a whole lot further than I can get $1 to go. So if I go to the store and buy $10 worth of dry goods or canned goods to then donate to you, that's so much that I can do. My guess is that if I give you the $10, then you're able to then procure so much more food in the process. Is that correct to be thinking that way?
That is about 3 times as much because of all the donated food and the government commodities that we receive. We're able to stretch our dollars much further than an individual would purchasing at a retail store.
Okay, so a great reason to go to the website and to donate. And for anybody who's listening on one of my podcast platforms, the links to be able to do that are going to be available in the description and the show notes for this. You're also in need of individuals to come and help, to volunteer their time, because ultimately, if you have all of this food, it needs to be brought in, sorted, and all of that, and then ultimately distributed out to the families. Talk about the need for volunteers.
Need for volunteers is as high as it's ever been. We love to bring folks out to our facility here in Duquesne, 1 mile from Kennywood, can come and help us sort and pack food so it can go onto our inventory for agencies to order. We have a new on-site food pantry, and we have volunteers who help as shopping buddies, help select the items in the food pantry here. We also have a number of distributions out in the community throughout southwestern Pennsylvania that are monthly produce distributions, and those we always need volunteers for that as well. So please go on our website, and there is a volunteer button, and you can sign up to volunteer.
One final thing, what are you projecting over the course of the remainder of this year when it comes to food need for the people of Pittsburgh?
I believe that the food needs are going to continue to remain high. We're seeing that across the board, whether it's our summer food program, where last year we provided more than 1.4 million meals to kids through that summer youth cafe program, or whether it's at our own on-site food pantry, the market, which we've seen a 40% increase since the start of the year, since January. I believe that the need that we will continue to see more and more people coming to us in need of food assistance, and many of those folks are working. The biggest change in who we serve over the years has been the number of households with people who are working, often 2 or sometimes even 3 jobs.
Oh, my. I think that is something that many people don't realize, that we are clearly dealing with a working poor, people who are trying their best to be able to keep their own head above water, but life circumstances are just such to where they need a little bit of help.
That's right. That's right. Either they're earning low wages, they may have a health issue, they may have a major repair that causes them to spend all their savings, and then they come to us when they're in their greatest time of need.
Yeah. Lisa, are there any individual stories, without naming full names here, but are there any individual stories that stand out to you that are meaningful and impactful to you that help motivate you every day to continue the work that you do at the food bank?
Well, there is, and I get notes. I get notes from children who've helped. They organize a food drive. So on that end, I get a lot of inspiration from those who give of their time, their talents, their money, especially young people who write notes about what they hope in the future that all their friends and their neighbors would have enough to eat. But also the people we serve who said that this has been when I've put a box of provided somebody with a box of food at one of the drive-up distributions that you saw in the early days of the pandemic. People who a woman who is stage 4 cancer, doesn't have family nearby. We were her only source of food at that time. She was afraid to go to the grocery store. Or other folks who come here to our on-site food pantry, the market, and they tell us it's really a lifesaver. They had no food at home. They don't know how they would get through the day. A couple folks I've spoken with who have health issues. One, another woman who has cancer, and she started to go to a food pantry in Washington County. Someone else who had a fall and now has a neurological disability and has talked about how that's really changed her whole life and how that's caused her to go to a food pantry in the North Hills.
I think about the people who are in need of food, and you think about this in developing nations, people who are struggling someplace else overseas. It's really difficult in some ways to look at the tremendous prosperity that we have in this country, in this region, and then at the same time, just a mile or two down the road, maybe sometimes even closer than that, there are those that are our neighbors that are in tremendous need. How do you reconcile this in your mind?
Well, hunger is a hidden issue here in the U.S., right? We interact. You've probably I'm sure you've interacted with somebody this week who is food insecure, but you just don't know it, right? It's a hidden issue. And people have a lot of pride. Imagine being a parent and not being able to provide enough food for your children, right? And so what do parents do? They'll skip meals. They'll skip meals so their kids can eat, or they'll stretch their meals. They'll do whatever they can to feed their kids. But, there's a lot of shame that goes along with not being able to provide for your family or not being able to provide for yourself. And I feel that people have a lot of pride. So it's not one of the early things that somebody would tell you about themselves, and it really is a hidden issue. And food's very personal. What we put in our bodies is very personal, and so that's why we provide the most nutritious food, the best quality food that we can provide people. That's so important, and it is different here than in a developing country where it's more about a starvation issue. And this is here in this country. It's just the people. So if you're working, you're just not able to put food on the table every day. And so it's not as though you're not eating for a month at a time, but you're not having that consistent access to nutritious food.
Right. Once again, Lisa Scales joining us. She is the president and CEO of the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank. Lisa, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for the wonderful work that you lead at the food bank.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, thank you for listening to the show as well. Please be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. For more on me and the show, make sure you visit ManginoTalks.com. If there's a topic that you would like me to talk about or a guest that you would like me to have on, send me an email, mangino@manginotalks.com. Follow me on your favorite social media platform by using @ManginoTalks. And then once you find me, please like, follow, subscribe, and share the pages with your friends and your family. And thanks again for listening to the Mangino Talks podcast.
I'm so scared.